here in a minute can hear you as well. So I'm going to turn it over, and let's go ahead and get started.
All right, it sounds like we're good now. So thank you all for coming out today and for having me, and for the lunch. That was really awesome, great food. I appreciate you guys sharing that with me today. So I'll introduce myself formally. I'm Sergeant Courtney Jones with the Montrose Police Department. My current assignment is I am in charge of our police academy as well as our school resource officer program and our internal affairs investigations when those pop up. But a couple years ago, I was in a community outreach program during which I met Margie, and was actually in this building before doing a presentation on safety. So through that, I started to learn about fraud crimes, and I started teaching classes about how to prevent fraud crimes or minimize damage when they do occur. So since that time, I've still been called upon to give presentations from time to time about current trends in those types of crimes and explanations about how folks can try to avoid falling victim, or if they do find themselves falling victim, how to stop the damage before it gets out of control. So let's take a look at the first slide. That'd be actually slide number 2, that's titled, What is Fraud? So fraud is a whole branch of criminal investigation and behavior. It can be a lot of different things. So the definition of fraud, according to our laws, is any criminal deception that is done for the purposes of financial gain. People may deceive you in the midst of a criminal episode for other reasons, revenge or whatnot, but if it's related to financial crimes, it's considered a fraud type crime. And that could be the theft of a credit card or debit card or a checkbook that then the bad guy uses without your permission, and so they steal from you that way. It could be criminal impersonation, like Margie was telling us about, where someone is trying to pretend to be somebody that they're not. Maybe they're pretending to be you. Maybe they're pretending to be someone you know in order to get information or money from you. If they're pretending to be you, forging your name, things of that nature, that's part of identity theft, which is a whole branch of its own type of fraud crime, which we'll talk just a little bit about today. Another one that we see a lot is the ones that come over the phone, in email, and sometimes in old-fashioned US mail, and those are the scams. That can be lottery scams, those can be investment schemes, and then the ones over the phone most commonly are the imposter scams. Those can also be online. Those can occur in various online forums. So that can be, we'll talk about them a little bit more here in a bit, but those could be sweetheart scams. Sometimes we call them grandparent scams. And then that's where we get into the unpaid bill and you have a warrant for your arrest and we're gonna take you to jail scams. So that's just kind of an overview about what we're gonna be talking about today. And then we'll dig a little bit deeper into each type of those crimes. So fraud is a really big problem in our country. And you can see the statistics up here. In 2022, the Federal Trade Commission reported that nearly $9 billion was lost by US citizens due to scams and frauds. That's a tremendous amount of money. That's hard to even fathom how much money that is. And there were 2.4 million fraud crimes reported in that same year. And the problem is that the true amounts of damage caused by fraud is probably far more than that because people don't report because they're embarrassed. Maybe it's a small fraud and they don't even notice. And then they just, in some cases, they know that they're had and the money's gone, or they just don't know what to do. And there are small frauds that people may not notice, at least in the beginning, where you buy something online. This happened to me a few years back. I bought some teeth whitening gel online, and they sent the gel. There was a real product, so I didn't think anything of it. And then I started to see very small, like $19 here, and then like $14 there. And it was, I don't remember buying anything for that, but it took me a few days before I realized something was up. And by the time I called my bank, they're like, yeah, we think it's related to this online purchase you made. We'll give it back to you. But if I hadn't noticed, if I'd been waiting on my paper statement, I might have been cleaned out. So It is important, and we'll talk about this throughout the presentation, it is important to check your accounts frequently because some scams start out that way. They want to know how much they can get from you without you noticing. So that just all goes to say that I didn't make a police report in that case. My bank took care of me. I didn't feel, they told me that there wasn't much that the police would be able to do anyway because I had conducted the initial financial exchange lawfully, and that it was probably a foreign company. So they're like, you can if you want to, but it's not going to accomplish much. So I didn't. So my $30 that US Bank ended up being out was never reported. So when you times that by every person in the country, that 8.8 billion is probably a lot higher. So what we see most here in Montrose, going to slide number 4, are crimes related to identity theft. That's probably our biggest crime that we can take action on. And so that's the cool part, is there are some crimes that we can take action on and some that we really can't beyond documentation. So when someone uses your information for gain, that could be someone that you know. That could be a former spouse or partner. It could be somebody, a family member that is pretending to use your name. They're pretending to be you in order to get something for their benefit without your permission. So those crimes we can usually track down and prosecute with relative ease. A lot of paperwork, but they're doable. The other type that we see is when someone steals a credit card, checkbook, and that sort of thing, and then they use it without your permission. The other types that we see are the scams and the tricks, and that's when a thief that you don't know, or perhaps someone you know from your past that you've lost touch with, and they get back in touch with you, and for whatever reason they convince you to send them money, and then once you send them the money, they're gone. Sometimes if it's a case like that, we might be able to track them down and prosecute them. Their money is probably gone, but we can charge them criminally if it's a real person that is still within the United States. If somebody is pretending to be someone they're not and they're outside of the country, there's not really much that we can do. And that's the scary part. But we'll continue to talk about that a little bit more as we go. So some of the common scams and tricks that we see, some of these you're probably pretty familiar with, is the letter that you get or the phone call that you get or email. Hey, you have won the lottery from Jamaica, or I am a Jamaican prince and I've inherited $1 billion from the king and I want to give it to you. And they're not always that over the top. Sometimes they're a little more subtle, like you won a drawing, or you've won a weekend stay at a resort and they claim to be with Hilton and they're going to offer you a weekend stay. You just have to pay this amount of money. That's not real. You know if you're in the Hilton Rewards program and if you've earned a free night, you know that. They're not going to call and give you a free night. So a lot of them are something for free that just seems too good to be true. And I'm going to say that a lot today. If it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And then we all kind of joke about this, but we hear it all the time. We're trying to track you down about your vehicle warranty. It's about to expire. Well, if your car is 20 years old, that vehicle warranty ship has sailed. So you can just hang up right now. If you have a newer car and you're concerned about that, you need to go get your paperwork out at home and figure out whether your warranty is really expired and hang up on that person. And if you are worried about the state of your warranty, you need to reach out to your dealership or whoever you bought the car from. Don't ever conduct business like that over the phone, okay? One that the scam that we call the grandparent scam, it doesn't necessarily always affect grandparents. It could be parents, it could be siblings. But it seems that especially if a family is geographically separated, perhaps grandma and grandpa live on the East Coast and everyone else lives on the West Coast, it makes it a lot easier to pull off this type of scam. So somebody calls up and says, hey, grandma, I'm in trouble. I'm in Mexico. I got arrested because I was drinking beer and I can't call my parents because they're going to freak out. They're going to be mad. Can you send me $5,000 or $10,000 to help me get out of jail and come home? And because the victim doesn't want to hurt their grandchild, They wire this person in Mexico, and it's probably diverted to somebody who's really in another country, the money to save their grandkid. And then they, okay, yeah, thank you, Grandma, everything's good. And then come to find out, grandson was never even in Mexico. So, you know, and it sounds kind of silly, like, well, how did they know that wasn't their grandson? Well, these scammers are smart. They will look you up on Facebook, or they may have looked up the grandson on Facebook and identified who the grandparent is, or they just take a wild guess. Maybe if they're able to do some research and know that the family is separated by geography, maybe they can make the assumption that they don't talk a lot on the phone and may or may not recognize the voice. They can have a bad connection. So then you're not sure, that didn't quite sound like him, but the connection's really bad. Maybe I'm just not hearing him correctly. So if something like that happens to you and you have a grandson who would be of the age, who might be in Mexico, you got to throw him under the bus. Okay, you got to call his parents or whatever the situation may be and verify. And if he's in Mexico and he's in a hot situation, then you got to figure out with your other family members what you're going to do. But do not send somebody money unless you are 110% certain that what's really going on is what's really going on. Because we have seen many people that fall victim to that. And that's not just older folks too. It's siblings that happens to, friends that happens to. So that is one of the ones that not so much recently, but over the years it pops up from time to time. The other one is a sweetheart scam, sometimes known as a catfishing scam, and that stems from online dating platforms. So you'll find a profile for somebody that you're interested in and you start chatting, and you start talking about maybe they want to meet up someday, and they really start looping you, wrapping you in, and you start feeling like you're making a bond with that person. And then all of a sudden they have their emergency, and that could be anything. We had one lady that, who knows if it was actually a lady who was originating the scam, but had conned a guy here in town by saying that she was being held hostage and that he needed to send her money because she was basically had been kidnapped and being held hostage. And so we went through the processes and figured out that it was all made up to try and get this poor guy to keep paying money. So we would still say, and even if you talk to somebody on FaceTime, if you have not met that person in real life and know them and know who they are, do not send them money. And I know that's hard. Online dating is a real thing and a part of our society now. But until you've met that person in real life in a safe, public place, do not give them any money. And you can find ways to or just be honest and say, I'm not very trusting. But that happens to people of all ages, from 20s to 70s have reported crimes like that. So that one, they get your heart. And that's just like the grandparent scam. They appeal to the emotions of fear for your grandchild. They lure you in and make you feel for them romantic feelings, and then they play on that to try and play to your vulnerabilities to give you money. And I'm not telling you this to make anybody hard-hearted. Just trust your gut. If you are talking to somebody on the internet and they start to ask questions or ask something of you and it just doesn't feel right, tell yourself, would I feel comfortable talking to my kids about this or someone from church about this? Would I share at coffee after church with my friends about how excited I am about this new relationship? If you say no, something's wrong. And it may be because it just doesn't feel right. So if you have that thought in the back of your mind, like, I don't know that I want anyone to know, then that's a red flag right there. All right, we'll skip on to the next slide. All right, so scams and tricks, we've gone over a little bit of this already, but they can get you in a variety of different ways. Some of them they simply just want your credit card information, or they may want your name, date of birth, social security, address, those things, so they can open accounts in your name. And that's kind of a different, more complicated, more of a long game for them. but you still want to be really careful about where you give that information, which is why most legitimate places will only ask for the last 4 of your social. They don't want to know the whole thing. And they shouldn't be asking for mother's maiden name, things like that. They shouldn't be asking you for that. Some of them will ask you to buy gift cards and send them as payment for something. Others will ask for the money transfer, which we've already talked about. But the gift card one, people fall victim to that quite often. And my own father fell victim to that for thousands of dollars a few years back. And the way that his scam worked was he was approached over the phone by someone claiming to be from a nature organization. My dad's kind of an outdoor lover, so he wanted to support an organization that was doing good things for the environment. And they probably got his name from a list of subscriptions of magazines and such, because he subscribes to legitimate magazines that way. So they called and pretended to be working for this organization, and they would say, hey, can you send us this type of gift card for our folks working in the field? They can't have cash, so can you send us a Walmart gift card for the people working in the field? And so it made sense to him, and he did it. But going back to what I said just a moment ago, he didn't tell me. He didn't tell any of his friends from his men's Bible study. He kept it secret, and he couldn't ever really explain to me why, other than that he just didn't feel like it was a good thing to talk about. So when you have that feeling that you want to keep it secret, something's amiss. So trust that. And no legitimate business will ever accept gift cards as payment for anything. Some charities may accept gift cards, but usually those are going to be something that you are providing to that charity for a specific reason. You know, if there's a church group that's raising donations for, say, a family, and they want gift cards to a specific store, say Target or whatever, hopefully that's like your church or a local charity where you can take it to them and there's that local accountability. If not, then don't mess with gift cards. Does that make sense? Okay. So yeah, we talked about if you want to ensure, if you do feel like you need to send wire money to someone, just make sure it's legit. Because once you wire money, it is gone. Gone. There's nothing your bank can do. There's nothing the police can do. It's done. Okay, so just make 110% sure before you do any of that. All right, we can go to the next slide. So this one we see constantly evolving, and I know the font gets kind of small there. So what that reads is we're talking about unpaid bills, debt, and warrant schemes. So the premise is that someone calls you and says, we are with, one that has occurred was the city of Montrose was named in one of these, and your water bill is overdue. We're going to shut your water off. DMEA has also been named. So they say that you have this unpaid bill, and if you don't pay immediately over the phone, we're going to shut your service off. So then you panic because you think, gosh, I don't want to lose my electricity, I don't want to lose my water. Fine, here's my credit card, get my stuff put back on. People don't even think. They just, you know, they're busy, they're frantic, whatever. Here, take care of it. So that one is one of the tricks that we see. We, as the police department and the sheriff's office, have both had people call around and say, hey, this is, they'll use real names of officers. And they'll say, yeah, this is Sergeant Jones with the police department. You have a warrant for your arrest because for unpaid tickets. You can either pay us over the phone now or we're going to come get you. And first of all, we don't call and tell you you have a warrant. We just come get you. But 9 times out of 10. But we don't take payment for anything. Like that goes to the courts. The police department never accepts money for a ticket. And if you do have a warrant, you have to deal with that through the courts. People can turn themselves in, but you would just go to the police department or the sheriff's office and go through that process. It doesn't occur over the phone, so that should immediately be a red flag. Whether somebody is saying that you have a warrant for your arrest or that you have an unpaid bill, if there's a question, contact that organization through the normal means. I think that's on the next slide if you want to move that one forward. If you're not sure if you're late on your water bill, get out the phone book or Google the real number for the City of Montrose Utilities or DMEA and call them. Maybe you know you never paid a speeding ticket and you're like, well, shoot, maybe I do have a warrant for my arrest. Just go down to the police department or call the actual police department and they'll tell you. So it's not ever going to be conducted over the phone like that. So that's my biggest caution to you. It can be any business that, it sounds like that Spectrum, that someone's pretending to be from Spectrum, calling in, these sorts of things. So that's one to be mindful of. It can be from anywhere. Now, sometimes these people, if you laugh at them, I had one guy with a ridiculous accent from I couldn't even tell where, telling me that he called and he says, I'm from the Internal Revenue Service and we're going to arrest you for not paying your taxes. Well, that also doesn't really happen. But when I kind of started laughing at him and I said, no, you're not. Because honestly, I like to mess with them on the phone because if they're playing games with me, they're not scamming somebody else. So I like to make them mad. But then he started to get mean and get mad at me, which just made me even more irritated. But if you ever are talking to someone on the phone like that and they are being mean and threatening towards you, you're always within your rights to call the police department and make that report. Now, 99.9% of the time, they're not local people. They're probably not even in the U.S. But if it just makes you feel unsettled and you want to report it, you're welcome to do that. And there is the chance that it could be somebody who maybe they are in the States. And if there's a reason that you think they're local, that's fine. Call and let us know and we can look into it for you and with you. But anytime somebody's being threatening or mean to you over the phone, they're not from a legitimate business. DMEA is not going to call and yell at you and scream at you because you didn't pay your electric bill. If you are having an issue there, they're still going to be expected to be professional. They're not going to threaten you. So if something like that happens, huge red flag that it's not legit, and you should call and report it to your local law enforcement. All right. So how do we investigate these crimes? If there is a local suspect, most of the time that's going to be either somebody that you know who is trying to steal money from you by using your information, trying to open accounts in your name, things of that nature, or they're using your ID or credit card or something that you stole. There's a lot of different means that we can go about with that. One of the best ways that we're able to catch somebody in that case is we'll get security footage from the store where they used your credit card or wrote a check. And then that identifies the person. A lot of times the suspect is someone that we're already familiar with. So we'll say, oh, yep, that's Jimmy Joe at it again. And we'll go bring Jimmy Joe in and then we can pursue a case against him. And most of the time, your banks will be helpful in those situations because it was beyond your control and you've made a police report. Sometimes banks will require that you make a report and they may tell you that you have to press charges. So where sometimes that has been a little icky is if it's a family member and people don't want to press charges. So we sometimes have discretion on that. And if you don't want to press charges, under some circumstances, we will press charges anyway. But if you don't want to and we decide that, that's fine, the bank may not reimburse you. Where we see that sometimes where we do file on your behalf is if it's an elderly person being taken advantage of by a kid, grandkid, neighbor, something like that. There are laws in Colorado designed to protect people over the age of 70. So that gives us more teeth to make sure that someone isn't being taken advantage of by a family member or a friend. So in some situations, we are still able to press charges even if the victim doesn't really want to. Also, if there is related to some sort of domestic violence or something of that nature, we can pursue charges whether the victim wants to or not. So, but other times, if it's a family member and they don't fall into either of those categories and they don't want to pursue charges, we'll say, fine, yeah, whatever. But the bank sometimes will say, well, then you don't need your money back. So that's just something to keep in mind. So fraudsters, and this is where it starts to get tricky and frustrating for us. Fraudsters who use the phone, internet, or the mail-based schemes, they're not usually local. Most of the time they are operating outside of the United States, which means that even our FBI and different organizations that investigate financial crimes can't do anything because they're beyond our borders. A lot of times banks will not refund that money because you gave that money voluntarily. So the people who fall victim to the grandparent schemes, the sweetheart schemes, lottery scams, investment schemes, they're out because the bank says you gave that money willingly. It's not our fault that you made a bad investment. For right or wrong, that's how it generally works. And then we can't pursue charges against someone we don't know who it is. So those are the ones that are the most damaging to people, and those tend to be the biggest. Those are the ones that are for often thousands and thousands of dollars. So those are why we get so insistent on don't do business over the phone. Okay. So protection and prevention. If you can't find your credit card or your checkbook or your debit card, immediately call and cancel that. Or freeze it. You can freeze accounts fairly easily now. If you have the apps on your phone and you lose your wallet, you can go in and freeze your different cards, so then you don't have to worry about replacing the cards and numbers if you find it under your passenger seat in your car. But I would recommend taking action on a lost item immediately, whether that's freezing it or canceling it. Same with your checkbook. The scary thing with the checkbook is you can't, if you even just lost a check, that could be significant and draining. So really keep that checkbook on a short leash. Don't take it out of the house except maybe to go to, where you're going to go shopping or something to that effect. Because if you take a checkbook out of town with you and you lose it, that just opens all sorts of Pandora's boxes. So be really careful about that. And then just don't share any information over the phone or email. Most larger companies will say that they don't conduct business through the email or over the phone. And if they do, it's just going to be an advertisement. They're going to say, hey, look, our new promotion or whatever, but there won't be any way that you can actually engage with them. It'll direct you to your normal website, to your normal app, things like that. So Wells Fargo Bank should not be saying, hey, click on this and give us your account number, because Wells Fargo Bank should have your account number. They shouldn't be asking for it. They should be directing you to the app, to the bank, or to their bank website. One I heard about just today when I was telling some friends at coffee this morning that I was going to be giving this presentation. A friend of mine said she got a weird call the other day that almost caught her because it was someone pretending to be from BMO, the bank that has taken over Bank of the Rockies or whatever the one was down on South 12th and Townsend. And the conversation that this guy had with her really made a lot of sense. He said, yeah, we're seeing this charge on your account. It was not like astronomical, but it was big enough that she knew she would have remembered that. She's like, yeah, that doesn't sound right. And so he said, okay, well, I've got the first 4 of your credit card, just give me the rest. And then she was like, no, wait, what? And, because usually it's the other way. We have the last 4 of your credit card. And he repeated himself. And then she realized that, the first 4 of your credit card number only identifies what kind of credit card it is. So like the first 4 is a Visa, or a MasterCard or whatever. So almost had her until she was savvy enough to realize, no, they're supposed to have the last 4, not the first 4 don't mean anything. So then she just laughed at him and hung up. But the real BMO is never going to contact you and do that. Even if they do call and say, we're seeing something concerning on your account, if it's really them, they're going to tell you to go to the branch, or they're going to tell you to log on and check your account. So don't ever give that information away over the phone. And I think if you do bank at any local banks, it's good to get to know the people in your branch too. So then you can feel comfortable going in and asking questions if you do get weird phone calls from someone pretending to be that organization. So one thing that I would, or some things that I would recommend is checking your bank accounts regularly. I check mine at least once a day, mostly just to see if there's anything that shouldn't be there. I generally use credit cards to do online purchases instead of debit cards because credit cards can do more to protect you faster and refund your money faster than banks can sometimes. So it's a little bit, you're a little bit safer with really big companies like Amazon, but I still always worry that today is the day they're going to get hacked. You know, they say, oh, you know, that'll never happen, but I do worry about things like that. So traditionally, your credit card companies can act faster to freeze and get money back to you if your number has been compromised, faster than a debit card. And remember that a debit card, they can drain your whole checking account, and if you have a checking account linked to a savings account for overdraft protection, they'll suck that too. So it's good to have that set up, but that's another big reason to be careful with where you use a debit card versus a credit card. Does that make sense? And if you have questions on that, you can talk to your individual banks about what their procedures are. So I use apps for my different credit cards, and I have notifications set up so that I know when I make a purchase. I do the same for my dad because since he went through his stuff, I've helped him get his accounts back in order. And I don't care what he buys. I just want to make sure that he's not spending $1,000 on Amazon because he wouldn't do that. So if I see something like that, I know something's happened. If I see an unexpected expense on my American Express that I only use for certain things, I'll know immediately that somebody has done something they shouldn't with my account. So I would recommend that you download the apps for your credit cards to get those notifications, and debit cards. That can be really helpful to know right away if you have any problems. Keep your bank and app passwords confidential, and don't share them, don't write them on a list that you keep in your wallet, which sounds super convenient, because it's hard to remember passwords, and you don't want to use the same one for everything because you're not supposed to do that either. But have it at a very safe place at home where nobody else can get to it, or there are online password vault programs that will remember them for you and autofill them. Google does that. Your Google login, your profile can remember passwords, and there's one called Bitwarden, which can do the same thing. You log into that, and then it'll remember all your passwords. Take advantage of the two-factor authorization opportunities on different websites. And that is kind of annoying. It's an extra 30 seconds before you can log into those websites because they'll send you a text or they'll ask you to answer certain questions or whatever. But that extra time could save you down the road someone messing with your accounts. So this one sounds a little weird, but we ask that you refrain from doing those fun surveys on social media that people will want to know, which states have you been to? What was your mom's full name? How many kids do you have? What's your anniversary date? Where'd you meet your spouse? All of those things are the answers to your security questions that are part of two-factor authorization. So they know what high school you went to, where you grew up, where your parents met, what your mother's maiden name was. That's all your password stuff. So we ask that you refrain from doing those. Just like you don't want to post pictures while you're on vacation out of town so that if there's some burglars in your neighborhood, they know, oh, okay, so they're out of town. Tonight's the night we go burgle. We don't want you to put information out there that someone can steal from you, okay? And those are fun. I used to do them back in the day when MySpace was the thing, but be mindful of what you're posting on social media that somebody could turn around and use against you. So the biggest filters that I would say to run through your brain when you're considering any of the things that we've talked about, investing in something, buying something, engaging over the phone or online with somebody is, did I initiate this? Maybe, maybe not. Did I request this? Maybe, maybe not. This is the big one though. Does it make sense? Does it make sense that somebody, that I've won a lottery I didn't enter? Does it make sense that somebody is wanting to give me money for nothing? Does it make sense that someone I've been talking to online on an online dating website wants me to send them $1,000? We've only been talking for a week. I wouldn't send someone I've known for years necessarily $1,000. Does it make sense that somebody that claims they went to high school with me, who I haven't heard from in 25 years, is suddenly calling wanting to be BFFs again? No, none of that makes sense. So if something like that's going on, I would say just shut it down. If for some reason you think that it's worth digging more, run it by a friend. And if you feel like it might be something to look into, then work with your friend to get through that. If you really think it might be the friend from high school who needs help. But ask more questions before just sending someone money, okay? The hard and fast rule though, I said it before, and I'm sorry the black doesn't show up as well on the screen as it did on my computer, but the hard and fast rule is if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. And I tell myself that all the time. And that could be anything. It's not necessarily even just scam related, but somebody making big promises to do something that you're maybe going to just invest a little bit of money, but a lot of time, something to that effect. It's a good philosophy for life that if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. Okay, so I think that's the last slide. But typically when I do this presentation, we have a lot of questions. So I want to put that out there. If you guys have any questions, fire them at me, and I want to hear what experiences you guys have had. Yes? Yeah, I'll have you ask the question again, and we'll talk about that.
On TV, you get wounded warriors and animal shelters and things. Are they all legitimate?
So that's a really good question. Many of those organizations are legitimate. What is dangerous is organizations that have almost the same name, very close to the same name, may send you things soliciting donations. There's actually a couple different things that we'll talk about here. Some of these charitable groups really are charitable groups. They have the designation where they are nonprofit. Number one, there's the question of, are they a good charity? Are they a quality charity? Do they do the right thing? So that before you donate to a charity, you can do research on that. You can Google them. There's a website called Charity Navigator, I believe, which rates charities on how much money they spend on overhead, how much they use for different things, how much actually goes to their cause. So before investing in a charitable organization, I would recommend doing that. The ASPCA, they are a legitimate organization. There's a national chapter and then there's local chapters. So it's perfectly wonderful to donate to the national chapter, but do you think when you're making that investment that it's going to help animals in your area? And it's probably not. So dig deeper before you give to even a good, legitimate organization and make sure you understand where that money's going. So that's point one. Point two is that there are fraudulent ones out there. A lot of the military and police organizations that you hear about are not real. They are scams. There's an FPPA for everything, Fire Police Protective Association. Now there is legitimate FPPA organizations. I'm part of like 3 of them. But there's lobbying groups that are called that. There are benefit for families. So there are legitimate ones that do a variety of different services, and there are groups that just put that in their title that aren't doing anything to help fire, police, or military. So I can't give a blanket answer about the companies or the charities that you see advertised. Some of them are legitimate and wonderful, and just be sure that you know where your money is going. Some of them are probably legitimate, but maybe don't have the smartest business practices, so do your due diligence. And then some of them, most of the ones that are suspicious are the ones that you get in the mail, in the snail mail. Those are the ones you gotta be careful of. Does that answer your question? Okay. Who's next? Yes.
With so much commerce having moved online instead of brick and mortar buildings, you might be online looking for something and you see an ad for something. You think, yeah, I would like that, and it's not available in a store because many stores don't exist anymore. How confident can you be that they're legit and not a scam?
So that's a tricky question. I'm not sure that there is a 100% foolproof answer other than saying don't buy it unless you feel really good about it. There are probably some ways to like tiptoe around it if it's something that you really want. You can Google the name of the store or the name of the product and see what reviews come up. That's one way where you might get some clarity about what the business is like. But then you have to take into consideration too that they could have bots or people working for them that are putting up fake reviews. So that's not necessarily 100% foolproof. I will admit that I saw a hoodie because I'm always cold. And I saw a hoodie last year that on a website that I really wanted because it said, I'm cold 24/7. And I thought that the website looked a little sketchy. And I took a chance, but I specifically used my American Express because American Express is known for being consumer friendly in that respect and not business friendly. And they are very willing to give you your money back and screw the business. Now, that's not necessarily good if you're talking about an honest mom and pop shop, which is why a lot of mom and pop shops don't take American Express. So I got the t-shirt, and there was no unusual activity on my bank account. But I later read the reviews, and people were like, this is a scam. They charged my card this, they charged my card that. And so was it because they knew that they wouldn't, that wouldn't fly because I used my American Express? I don't know. But I probably shouldn't have bought the hoodie, but it worked out okay for me. But I would say if you're when in doubt, probably just don't do it, okay? Another way you can do that, though, you find the product and find the name of the individual product, not necessarily the name of the vendor. So you find the vendor, and then you find, say it's a special candle. So you find the candle, copy the name of that, and put that into Amazon. And maybe Amazon does have it as well. I've found that a couple times. And the other thing you can look for too is the little lock in the bottom corner of the website. At least that tells you if it's a secure website and whether or not your information is being secured. That doesn't mean the people on the other end aren't going to misuse it, but it's less likely to be stolen in transmission.
I got a phone call the other day saying, this is the sheriff's department. Would you like to donate money to the disabled and all that stuff? He gave me a name, but I can't remember it. So I just hung up on him. Is that the right thing to do?
That's fine. I don't believe that the sheriff's department will ever call. They have their posse mailer that they mail out every year. And that's just something that they do. But I think that they probably expect that people are going to call and want to know more about that organization. But I believe that it comes with a whole accounting of what their posse has done for like the last year, and it goes through all of their rescue missions and their activities that they've taken part in. And you can go down to the sheriff's office and inquire and ask more information. But the sheriff's department, the police department, none of the organizations that actually benefit our local agencies are going to be making phone calls asking for money. We're not part of any charitable organization at this time. Over the years, we've done contests with the sheriff's office and the fire department. We had the Red and Blue Games a few years back, but that was us going to businesses or our family and friends asking for money to try and outraise the other agencies to benefit the Special Olympics and things like that. So it was actually people showing up in uniform or in a polo saying, I'm Sergeant Jones from the police department. I'm going to be playing pickleball against the fire department. Would you like to sponsor me? That's going to be an actual person showing up in person. Then we're not going to send something out in the mail or over the phone. Yes?
I know when I make charitable contributions, I usually make them through PayPal because that way I can track what my total contributions are for tax purposes later on. Is it your opinion that that is an authentic intermediary so that they don't have, the vendor doesn't have access, or maybe if it's not a charitable contribution, some small purchase, they don't have direct access to my credit card numbers, but they can only access my PayPal account? So is that an effective barrier, do you think?
I think it is. You know, a lot of smaller businesses use PayPal. I don't think that it's bad in the general sense, although I do worry about a third-party vendor getting hacked or something to that nature, which just makes me feel a little oogie. But I think that there are some benefits to PayPal because they are that buffer, especially if it is one of those smaller websites or an upstart business that just doesn't have the accounting software of their own. They can use PayPal. I've used it, never had any issues, but I still worry about the security of of their records. There's no 100% foolproof way. I think you're fine to use PayPal, but I think it's just constant vigilance of checking out your records and making sure that there aren't anything's popping up that shouldn't be there. Any other questions? Yeah.
I had a situation about 3 or 4 years ago. MasterCard called me, and maybe all of you have gone through this. Did you make this charge? And they told me about the charges, and they, I guess what they do when they get your number, they try a small, usually they call it phishing, I think. Mm-hmm. People try for a small $25 thing, and if it goes through, then they go for a big one.
Yep.
And I think the big one was like $600 or something like that, so they didn't honor it, they shut it right off. And I got to talking to a acquaintance of yours and mine both, Doug Glassbell, and I know he won't mind me using his name, but he and I, it happened to both of us at the same time, and we got to recounting back, and we had both been to the same stores a couple of days before. So some way, somehow, they got it, actually the store right here in town some way. So, but anyway, we thought it was interesting that, and maybe there were more people in this town too, mm-hmm. but it just happened to be that Doug and I knew each other real well. So.
And that is, we haven't seen that so much in the last couple of years, but there for a while it was all the rage. They scan your card when they put it in the card reader, and they either attach something to the legitimate card reader, they have their own that they scan, like those little square devices, and that's how they get your information, and then they use it for their own benefit. So say it was I don't want to, we'll just say Bob's Food Truck, because I don't know where it was and I don't want to get any real business in trouble, but you go to Bob's Food Truck and they use their device to scan your card for lunch, no issue. But at the same time, they also took that information into their computer, and now they have it and can use it to buy stuff online or in other locations. And that's, to prevent that, is where they went to the chip on the card and then the tap, the little lines, the little symbol where you just tap, is supposed to try and circumvent some of that. So yeah, and you're absolutely right. They'll do like their fishing expedition. Just like the one that I told you about many years ago with the teeth whitening. They just did a couple small charges to see if I would notice, or if the card was still good, if I'd canceled it or anything. And then probably if I hadn't called the bank when I did, they would have done a big one, which I didn't have a lot of money in my account back then. I was poor back then, so it wouldn't have gone a whole lot farther. But that's what they do. They do a little fishing expedition.
Another thing I've noticed, the last MasterCard I got, the numbers of the card are on the bottom side. Mm-hmm. I think is a big thing. It doesn't, I never read anywhere where they were doing that, but when you put your card out there, you can read the numbers, but now you can't.
Yep.
It's on the bottom side.
Yeah, and it's if you set it on a counter, people are able to take a picture of it, or security cameras or whatever, they can see it, and then they've got your expiration date. And more companies are asking for the 3 digits on the back, which you wouldn't have, so that is another level of protection for online shopping too. But yeah, that's another benefit of putting the information on the back.
Yeah, about, maybe 8, 9 months ago, wife and I were up in the Dakotas on a camping trip, and we got an email that this charge, we got it from the bank, and that we had made this charge on her credit card. Well, we don't have the computer with us, we're not checking this stuff. But it was really a legitimate thing because they told us to go to the branch, and we had to drive about 30 miles to get to the same branch that we have here in Montrose. And you say, yeah, they just canceled the card and gave us another one. But it's kind of interesting, we thought, that you'd kind of develop a profile. And when something kind of goes out of that profile, they will contact you and say, did you do this?
Yeah. Yeah, I think especially if you have fairly predictable spending habits, I think that that's to your benefit in many respects, because then the bank is going to notice something unusual. It's a little more difficult if, say, you travel for work, and so you're in different cities all the time. That may be a lot harder for them to develop that profile, but I think for most folks, they do know that, well, you know, they live in Montrose, sometimes they go to Grand Junction or Denver, but why are they in Vietnam? You know, now if you're a globetrotter, you know, then that might not apply, but I think that they do a really good job of trying to establish that. And what kind of purchases are you making?
Somehow, in South Dakota, we got our debit card. I don't think we ran it off the computer at Walmart or something, I don't know. Somehow they got it.
And that could have been, it could have been somewhere else that you used your card online, or it could have been, they would put them on gas pumps. Back, you said it was like 8 years ago or so. Sometimes in gas pumps, they'd have like an extra little bump in front of where you put your card in that you couldn't hardly even notice. And so you would be sliding it through their skimmer and not even realize what you were doing until they had your information down the road. So I think they've got pretty smart on that now to where they're pretty identifiable. You'd notice, like nowadays, if you were at City Market and there was this weird thing hanging off the front of it. But you know, when they first started with those card readers on the pumps, it was totally they looked different. And everywhere, each one looked different. And now all the machines are a little more consistent. Yes?
I noticed that my credit cards now say we do not have to inform them that we're going to be traveling away from our home locale. And that makes me a little nervous because, I mean, I do have people in Hawaii and New Hampshire, and years ago I was traveling quite a bit overseas. How is it that I'm supposed to feel secure if I don't have to tell them, yes, I'm going to Germany and Hungary and so on, and if you see charges, they're probably okay, and then something comes in from Istanbul. I mean, they don't seem to be too concerned about that anymore. What are they doing to protect me?
I'm not sure because I haven't seen that email from my bank, so it may be that they're trying to use AI is all the rage nowadays, you know, and how the computers are thinking for us. So that may be what they're counting on, is that they're seeing, if you're traveling, they're seeing an expense in an airport here. They're seeing an expense in an airport restaurant here and a hotel here. So, but if you're not the one traveling, they're not going to catch that. What would be a red flag is if they're also seeing expenses at your house or in your hometown. So maybe they're just really counting on artificial intelligence to do the work for them. I don't really feel comfortable with that. So I would say that just redouble your efforts to on your apps, put on the notifications so that you get notified when there's and it is annoying because you get that little buzz and then oh yeah, I know I just bought that. But it's sure worth it when you didn't just buy that because it might save you a lot. Any other questions or no silly questions. I'm happy to, if you have something you're wondering about, is this a scam? Is this not a scam? I'm willing to try and help you piece it together. And we got one here, and then we'll work the mic over there.
Sorry. This isn't going to be a question, it's going to be a confession.
Okay.
Yes, this smart lady got a email from Sam's Club. Well, I am a member of Sam's Club, and it said that your membership has expired, and would you like to renew? So I said, sure, to myself. And it said, so I clicked down a little bit further, and it says, if you will renew your membership now, we will give you 1 year free. And I thought, great, that's even better. So then I clicked, and it said continue, so I would continue. And then, of course, then I should have known, because it wanted my name, address, and my email. And then my credit card number. So I put in my Sam's credit card, because I have a MasterCard through Sam's. Put it all in, waited, and it said invalid number. So I tried it again. In fact, I think I was at Sue's house when I was going through this. It still kept doing that. So then I hung up and I called the number on the back of the Sam's card. And she said, well, I'm sorry, ma'am, this is the bank that owns, Sam's card. You need to call Sam's card number. So she gave it to me. So I called, explained to the lady. She said, oh, well, did you give him your credit card number? I said, yes, but it said invalid. She says, oh, please don't do that. She said, Sam's card will never offer you a free 1 year membership. Mm-hmm. And I said, well, I did. And I said, is there any way you can put, that I informed you of this stupid thing on my card? She said, well, not really. And I said, well, okay. So I was just so thankful, and I give God the credit for him protecting me, saying that it was invalid, because they could have just ripped everything off. And so I checked a few days later, and nothing was ever put on my card. So, but just don't be stupid like me.
Well, it's not stupid. It's easy to fall victim to that, especially when it is a company that you know that you're dealing with. And, I say if it sounds too good to be true, it probably is. But sometimes you get deal offers for something like that. And I know they say they never offer that, but sometimes you will see deals for buy one, get one free that are, that sound legitimate. And so that's, just slow down. I think that's another big thing, is just slow down before the temptation gets the better of you. But thank you for sharing. I think that's a good example of the type of stuff that's out there.
Here's one, it's legitimate. We went to Maverick, got gas, spent $30 on gas. Then a week later, we went to City Market, spent $30 on gas at City Market. Maverick charged us I can't remember the name of the word, a pre-authorization of $175. Ooh. And then City Market charged us a pre-authorization of $150. So we lost all that money in the space of a week. We got the $175 back from Maverick, but City Market and our bank said we authorized that transaction, so they weren't giving us the money back. And so since then, we get cash out of the ATM machine, and we pay cash for our gas. That's the only way we could figure out to protect ourselves from these pre-authorizations for gas.
Yeah, I haven't heard of a pre-authorization that's that big. Usually it's, I've seen 10, I've seen 50, like for a hotel sometimes.
50 was standard.
Yeah. Wow. And was that something that your bank was doing, or that the stores were doing?
The stores blamed the gas pump companies, and our bank blamed the stores. We were like, it was a huge runner.
Wow. I have not heard of those types of that big of overages before. That's a huge red flag.
I would call Better Business Bureau
Yeah.
on that one.
And management, like for regional managers for that company, like talking to someone from, not like the local store, but from,
We went to the stores and talked to people in the store.
right.
The manager at, now, was really nice, gave us the corporate number, we could talk to them, and they had us email them the receipts and everything. But they reimbursed us some of the bill, we tried to do something,
And they wouldn't do it, huh?
they would not do it, because they said it was the people that own the gas pumps.
Yikes.
That's what they were charging, because it said that on their gas pump, that the reason that they paid was for not doing it.
Yeah, that sounds fishy all the way around, both on your bank's part and on those businesses. So I think taking action as quick as you can, referring to the Better Business Bureau, demanding to speak with management. If the gas station manager isn't giving you a satisfactory answer, demand to talk to the higher levels, because that's not right. Has anybody else had something like at that extent? Yeah, I almost feel like somebody was trying to take advantage of you in that situation, because that's not normal. I've never seen anything more than $50, and that's usually at like a hotel or something. The gas ones are usually lower. That's. Yeah, so sometimes when you use a credit card at a gas station, I think the reason they do it is so that if you can't pump and run. So it opens up the ability to start working the pump, and then you can do more than one vehicle or whatever until you put the thing back in. Because people used to like fill up and then they'd leave, or they'd put in another vehicle, and they wouldn't end up paying for the right amount. They'd take more gas than they paid for. So initially, that's why it authorizes for an amount and then holds it until the transaction clears. I'm not sure that I'm explaining it that well, but the intent is not to put a huge hold that's going to be more than the cost of what you could even, if you put premium in a pickup truck, it's not going to be $170. So the intent usually is just to hold it so that you can't skip on your gas. And at hotels, they do it in case you trash the room. It's like a deposit essentially, but then they call it like an authorization. But that's the intent of it, was to keep the customers from doing incorrect things. But now it seems like it's working against the customer, and the business is taking advantage of that, is what it sounds like. And that's not right. Any other questions? I think one thing that I didn't mention, because I think I got excited and skipped to the next slide, was that if you do see some fishy activity on an account, we want to know, especially if it's something you think there's a local suspect or something, absolutely report it to the police. But with financial crimes, damage happens so fast that it sounds crazy, but call your bank first, because they can actually do stuff to stop the hemorrhaging. Where we just, we'll investigate and try to find the person who's doing it if we can, if they're local. But the bank can just like stop the bleeding, or freeze your card if you have that on the app, if you have that opportunity. So that's the first step, just like in the medical sense, is stop the bleeding. Then we work on putting the pieces back together. So don't take the time to call us first. And I think that's an important step, because people, they want to get help, investigate who did this to me, how can I get my money back? And that's very valid, and we do want to help you with that, but get the bleeding stopped first. Yes? Oh, let him bring the mic over, sorry.
I can't. You mentioned artificial intelligence.
Yes.
We keep hearing more and more about that. That may be out of your realm at this point. I don't know how much you deal with it, but I get a monthly newsletter from one of the realtors in town.
Okay.
And this month's, I'll just read you the first paragraph. Please be aware of a concerning new form of harassment happening locally. AI-generated phone calls using foul language and threatening statements aimed at intimidating the individual. Reports have surfaced in our area with forewarn searches linking calls to real estate agents here in our state.
Oh, wow.
So there's more to it, but
I believe it. I haven't taken any I haven't heard of any reports of that. As far as I know, all the reports of threatening phone calls that we've received have come from humans who admit doing it. But it doesn't surprise me. I have heard of it on the national scene, like on the political side of things, where people have been deep faked is one of the terms that they use. So they have, you know, a politician's voice calling and saying crazy things. And
I think, sorry to interrupt, but I think there's a John Goodman video out there right now. John
Oh.
Goodman, of course, in the last year dropped 70, 100 pounds or whatever. They're using AI to sell diet pills. They've taken stock video of John Goodman. They've used AI to recreate his voice. He is then telling you, you want to lose weight. I'm John Goodman. You've seen me in all my movies. Take this pill. Send them money. So this
Yep.
is a real thing.
It is. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of good potential for AI. I think it can help some things, but I think there's a lot of potential for abuse. And I don't know what our country or the world, I mean, it's just definitely not the US, but I don't know what the answer is. But I think that just makes us have to be that much more skeptical. If you get a call from somebody that it just doesn't make sense why they're cursing and yelling at you, I still think report it, and we can look into it and make sure that there's no actual threat to your safety. Probably not anyone who actually lives in Montrose has access to that technology to do it themselves, like, hey, I don't know, someone that you used to work with who's just real hateful or whatever decides to do. I mean, I think that would require a lot of technology and knowledge on their part to be able to work that for an individual. But the technology exists for sure, and going into political season, we'll probably hear all sorts of weird robocalls and you aren't even really going to know who is orchestrating it. It may be the political candidates, it may not. It may be some completely random wingnut group that's just calling to stir the pot. In these times, we just have to be even more mindful of scrutinizing everything, and it stinks because we shouldn't have to live that way, but it's getting crazy. Yes?
My son who lives in Pennsylvania wants to take care of his mom. He's pretty much told me, just don't answer the phone, Mom.
Mm-hmm.
You can see who's calling.
Yep.
If you don't know who it is, just don't answer it. They can leave a message. Well, in the last couple of weeks, I've had a couple calls from my medical provider, national company. And I've done that. I've let it go to the machine. And they're saying they're just checking up on me, wanting to know how I'm doing. And I thought, well, that's very nice of you, but I send you a check every month. Isn't that enough? So I know I could probably, they've checked the number. I have not done that. But I just thought that was kind of strange for them to even be doing something like that. And I'm to the place now where I'm like, I'm not talking to anybody.
Yeah.
Because of the AI stuff, he keeps up with that a lot better than I do. And he said, all they want is to listen, to have your voice recorded. So anyway.
Yeah, that's a weird situation that your medical providers just want to call and check in. Even if they're from a national organization, I'm sure there's a local contact or somebody that you deal with. It should be that person calling to visit, not some random number. So that, to me, it seems fishy, especially if they're not saying contact your local provider. So that seems weird to me. There is some potential threat to having an AI-generated call that tries to get you to say yes. Yes. So if I answer and I'll say hello, and they'll be hello, hello, hello. I'll let them say it a couple times, and then I'll say hello again, and then can you hear me? And then I just hang up, But you just don't want to say yes. If if you for whatever reason feel the need to continue the call, you can say go ahead, or something, I guess, or say no, and see what they say. But or okay, but just don't you don't want to be saying yes. You probably shouldn't say anything really. Because those are clearly recordings. Sometimes it's the same lady I have, they've always been ladies' voices that I've gotten on those, that just, hello, hello, can you hear me? Hello. And I had a weird one yesterday that I'm not quite sure what happened, but I answered a restricted call because sometimes medical offices will come up as restricted. And my dad's elderly, so I tend to answer those. And the weird thing was that it was somebody on the other end. So I said hello, and then it was a human. He was like, hello, this is Paul. And I was like, okay. He's like, who's this? And he's like, and I said, you called me. And he's like, no, you didn't. You called me. And I hear like construction equipment in the background. So like, it seemed like there was something, like someone was messing around. So it just, there's so much weird stuff with technology out there right now. So I just hung up. I don't, sorry, Paul, but just be careful. If it's really something legit, they'll call you back.
I got one of those calls about a month ago, and they said, this is so-and-so, so-and-so. Who do I have the pleasure of talking to?
Yeah.
Lady, if you don't know my name, I'm going to talk to you.
Yeah. Yep. Remember, they're calling you. Yeah. They should know who you are. Yep.
I had a call the other day from my local State Farm office.
Okay.
They identified as his office. And I've had this in the past, just asking if I'm okay. Do I need anything? Do I need help getting groceries? Do you think that is off the wall, or could it really?
I haven't, because State Farm does call, I have State Farm, and they call every year, and they want to go over your portfolio, and they want to sell you more products and stuff, but they've never offered to buy me groceries.
That was not part of the conversation was not, we need to go over your coverage and stuff like that. It was like just checking in to see how you're doing, and I've had that, at least one other call like that. I don't get them often, but.
I would actually, I would call your actual agent.
Okay.
And say, if this is legit, then I appreciate it, I'm good to go, but if this isn't legit, you should know somebody's calling, kind of being creepy. And
okay.
Yeah, it's pretty weird, yeah.
Thanks.
Because they may be trying to see if you are vulnerable, if you're not able to get out and buy groceries, if you're ill and maybe needing some sort of support, they may think that you're more of an easy target, and they may be trying to fish and figure that out.
Right. I get these calls almost every 6 months. I lived in Parker. I've been here for 12 years. 12 years. And they call in, am I the homeowner? And it's like, yes. From the phone number, I know it's a Denver area phone number that they're calling from. Am I the homeowner? And I said, for what address? And they read the address. It was an apartment that I lived in for a year. Started, like 13 years ago, left from there to come here. And they're offering solar to my apartment.
Yeah.
3-level, 15 buildings or whatever, 16 buildings. It's like, you need to do your research before you try to spam somebody.
Yeah.
He was so indignant that I said he was spamming that he started cursing at me. But it's the same, it's like an East Indian accent. And I still say, for what address? And now he hangs up when I ask that. I mean, they don't even take a clue to, like, take that number off and quit calling.
That could be a couple different approaches. They may be salesmen for that company, and they got your former address from, because if you Google yourself, you'll find all sorts of crazy things.
Oh, right.
He could also be trying to verify former addresses for you, because sometimes those are questions that you'll see on two-factor authorization.
Right.
So if it comes up, which address did you not live at, he may be trying to figure that out.
Right. And that's what I said, for what address are you?
Yep, that's a
calling?
good question.
Since it's a Denver area code rather than a 970.
Yep.
I knew it wasn't for here. So,
Yeah.
So just, when they're doing that, if you.
Yep.
It's stupid.
Yeah, and I get calls all the time on both my work and my personal phone that'll be from different area codes, and ask yourself, do I know anybody in Louisville? If you don't, then let them leave a voicemail. You know, and like, honestly, you don't, if it's not coming up as someone you know, you don't need to answer. Someone, if they're legit, they'll leave a message. And then they'll text you too. And they'll text you like you're in the middle of a conversation, and you'll say hi, and you'll be like, who is this? And then they'll say, oh, this is Ann. And you know, again, I like to mess with people like that. But, and so sometimes I'll make up crazy things or whatever, but they want to bring you into whatever their drama is. Mm-hmm. Yep, do you want in on it? Yep. Yeah. Be careful with anything on Messenger. Be careful on Facebook Marketplace. Lots of legitimate local people selling stuff on there, but what you'll run into is they'll say, you know, they want to buy your product or whatever, and then they'll ask if you know, and you said, I only take cash and I want to meet in a, you know, Walmart or whatever. And they'll always have some reason that they can't meet in person. Can I Venmo it to you? And I just have a hard and fast rule. Anything I'm selling online, I'm going to get cash, and I'm not going to mail it to you. We're not going to play these little games. I'm going to meet you at City Market South at 2 in the afternoon, and we're going to do an exchange. But they want to know your phone number and your email and all this and that, and they want you to do all this. No. As soon as they start to do that, then you're done, in my mind, anyway. So I think just be real careful with that sort of stuff. Be cautious of who you engage with on Venmo, or Zelle, I think is the other one. To me, that's for when you go out to dinner with your friends, people you know well, and say, I'll pick up the tab, you Venmo me later. That's the intent of that, is not to engage with strangers. All right, any other questions?
Okay, well, why don't we say thank you?
Thank you, guys.
Definitely, if it sounds too good to be true, it is. The government is not going to email you and say, we want to give you money. The government takes money. The government doesn't give money.
Right. Yeah.
Oh, yes, and princes and kings from other countries that want to